So I'm here with Stephen Keech. He is the lead singer of Haste Today. They're actually doing some shows this year if you want to check him out. He worked for Soundstripe for about 4 years and is currently working on the score of a feature film. So if you don't know much about Stephen Keech, definitely check him out on those areas. Now, one thing I really want to talk to you about, you're doing a podcast called Beautiful Failures, and why is failure so important to the creative process and in life?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's such an important question because every single person is going to face a failure at some point. I mean, it doesn't matter what field you're in. It doesn't matter what, what you've decided to do with your life. You are going to reach some type of point where you're like, wow, that didn't work out the way I had planned. And, I kind of define failure as anything from, the big epic Elizabethtown failure. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but like epic fail, like millions of dollars fail. And then there's the everyday failures where, and I think most creatives are like me where they're sensitive, and it's those little failures that really get in there and really start to hurt.
What are some little failures that you could kind of share in that moment that really hurt? Because those could be so different for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, our landscape right now of social media is brutal. It's a brutal landscape, and it's very hard as an artist or a creative to essentially, put your work out there. And I think the harder thing for me is less negative reviews and more like no eyes on it. You know what I mean? Like, and the algorithm kind of has our content in its hands, and it's up to the algorithm to get it where it might go. And anyway, so like a failure for me, what I might deem as a failure, which to other people wouldn't be, is like releasing a song and like trying to get it out on all channels. And if it's not like being supported by some type of advertisement or paid whatever, it's really difficult to get people's ears on it, even if it's like, I know it's a good song or whatever. And it's really hard to not take that, personally.
Yeah. I would say that's the plight of the new up and coming artist.
Yeah.
What have you done to be able to kind of encourage yourself through that or even break through? Have you found anything or?
I think, luckily my job doesn't, require a ton of ears on Spotify or something like that. Cause I'm working more directly with clients at this point and people hiring me to make music for their projects. And so honestly, I just kind of ignore social media as much as possible. And I put it out there. I kind of, have given myself the understanding that like, all right, I'm putting this out into the world and I know that it's good. Like I'm happy with it and I did this for me. And I think creating things for yourself and knowing that they're for yourself it's so important as an artist because, if you are creating for other people, then your entire like creative life is based on what someone else decides for you, and that just doesn't make sense.
So you have these personal projects that are fueling your personal experiments, desires, and then you have your client projects, which are funding your life, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that the right balance, in your opinion, for a creator?
I mean, I think it changes for every person. I mean, I know that there's artists out there that, like probably need to be doing only art for themselves and their talent, like can take them through that. And, they've figured out a business plan that will support them with their main art. I really love working with people. I really love, bringing people's visions to light. So like, especially with like filmmakers. So I score films and write music for films, and telling stories is like really exciting to me. And, telling stories through music, especially. And as much as I love writing just music for the casual listener, it's way more fun to pair that music with a visual and a story and help someone else tell their story.
Yeah.
So,
Some of my wife and I are huge. I've become a huge like not rom com, but like kind of the classic romance stuff, and like Pride and Prejudice, the newer
yeah,
one, Emma. Like these scores to me are just, I mean, they just without the score, it wouldn't be the same movie. I mean,
right.
it emotionally pulls you through the movie in such a and then you listen to the soundtrack and you think of these characters.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite scores in the past 5 years of movies that have come out?
Mm. Ooh, okay. So my favorite uh, is Wakanda Forever, Ludwig Göransson. Um, his use of just multicultural music is just unreal, and his like collaboration with like different people groups and cultures and um I mean the guy went I believe he went to Mexico and like worked with like Mayan speaking rappers.
What?
Yes.
That's
And
so cool.
and it's like, yeah, the genres that he melds together just and the orchestration, it's all just so beautiful and really great storytelling as well. Um so that one, I mean, this is way longer ago than 5 years ago, but I'm gonna pivot and about The Fountain, which is my favorite score probably of all time. Um The Fountain is an Aronofsky film, and Clint Mansell did that score. Um, I mean, the film itself is like it's kind of like a 2 hour music video for the score, which is probably why I love it so much. The story is like fantastic, and it's so weird, and Aronofsky is a weirdo when it comes to some kind of like his films, but it's beautiful, and the score is just incredible, and I listen to it all the time. But yeah, I could go on for days about different scores that I love, but
Are you a Star Wars score fan?
sure, yeah. I mean, it's classic. I mean, there's
New versus old?
old
So
for sure.
why?
Um,
I mean, I agree, but why? What from a musical standpoint? I love music, but I'm not technically capable. I
yeah,
hope to be one day if I would start practicing. From a technical standpoint, why are the old ones better? Why are the old Star
that's
Wars
a good
scores better?
question. Well, I mean, I would say that they're what set the stage for everything that follows. I mean, there are some really great musical moments in all of the films. I do think that because they were like those first three were kind of um, they were done close together, so they all have the same feel. I mean, all of the Star Wars music has the same feel, but like if the production, the uh, just the way the themes were used to tell the story was like very I don't know, maybe it's because I'm just so married to those first three films that like I have a hard time like everything else kind of feels a bit like a copy. But all the films are great. I mean, musically, like they bring in those themes and it's great, but my favorite are those first three.
From a perspective of recording, um, analog versus digital, do you think the fact that the original Star Wars trilogy was produced probably from an analog standpoint, do you think that makes a big difference? I mean, I've been watching some of your shorts, and there's a lot of I love your piano shorts with the open piano, and it
Oh
just
yeah,
there's
thanks.
such a rawness to it.
Yeah.
Does that often have a lot to play with it, or do you think you can accomplish still an analog sound through digital?
Well, sure. The analog, um, you can always make. I mean, digital stuff has come a long way. I mean, I use a an interface called the Universal Audio Apollo, and they have fantastic analog like modelers in there. So like I'm using, a vintage Neve preamp for this right now, and it sounds great. But the thing that you can't replace is the finality of the analog and tape world back then. You had to make decisions based on scarcity, scarcity of number of tracks you can use, scarcity of how much tape you could use, scarcity of how many musicians you could fit in the room. It was a lot of limiting, and because of that, I think you were forced to make the best decision possible right away. You know what I mean? Like, so like now it's like, oh yeah, I can record this, Neve pre, but I can also change it, and I can try 10 different ones on the click of a button, and same with like in the box. Like, I mean, I use software instruments all the time. And, so I'm like orchestrating, fake strings and whatever, but, the choices that I make are, they're frivolous. Like I can kind of like change my mind later. And so I don't have to commit to really anything, but in the analog world, you do. It is commitment, and with that, you don't have like as pristine, perfect things, which I personally like. I love the humanity in music. I love in the analog world and all that stuff. So
the plan leading up to the work is of utmost importance, whereas in this digital world, we're almost put more emphasis on the post-production to kind of scrounge around for what we want the final result to be. Where when you're recording analog, you're thinking about the final result before you even hit the first string on the first violin.
Exactly.
For that piece. How has that conversation influenced how you're producing your music? You seem to love, from what we just talked about, an analog approach. Yeah. Do you get lazy, or are you remaining true?
Well, going back to like the fact that I worked at Soundstripe for 4 years, and we had a quota of eight tracks a month. So that's kind of a lot for anyone who produces music, and you don't have the budget or time to bring in real players. So yeah, I got cozy real quick, just doing all in the box, all like digital whatever. And I kind of had like I guess currently last week, I had a bit of a renaissance of this, like, oh my gosh, I need real musicians on everything. I recorded a string quartet for this, feature film that I've been working on. And that was the finality in that is it's real, like I wrote all those parts and they play it, and you have a limited amount of time and you have a limited amount of money that you can pay these people, and you got to get it done, and your decisions have to be on point. And, that was just such a thrill ride, and the result was just so beautiful, and,
Love it.
Completely different than if I were to like program it all in the computer, it was great. And there's going to be definitely a lot more collaboration with live musicians with me in the future. It was something that I really cared about a lot before I started working at Soundstripe. And then I guess because I didn't really have the choice. It definitely made me lazy for a while. And yeah, I'm back.
You're back.
I'm back.
You're back in the analog world. Okay. I got, before we switch, I got to show you something real quick. All right. This is something I'm working on it, and I don't want to hijack this, but it's that analog thing.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Okay. So this is me cheating analog. Okay. This is a high 8 tape camera.
Okay.
However, I didn't want to purchase a whole conversion mechanism to take the high 8 tape slam it into some converter, and then go all the way around. So what I did is I took a converter box, mounted it on the camera, powered it with a power supply. It runs into an Atomos Ninja.
Wow.
And then it records it on camera.
Wow.
However, I still have to make the decisions like it's analog because I'm looking for those lens flares. I'm looking for those blurs in color. And I'm actually recording a music video with a friend of mine in town on Friday with this. And I am just so amped
That's
to do
awesome.
this.
And did you custom fit this? I don't know much about.
Yeah, so this is like just a universal camera cage.
Okay.
Which then I fit onto the Sony Hi8 camera, and then I built out the whole conversion kit here on top.
Wow.
And then it goes to HDMI, and then I ordered this. It's like a old recorder, but I only need 720p. Hey. So yeah, it works.
That's awesome.
I was shocked. I didn't know if it would work. Like, it worked.
Anyway, to bring it back to the whole failure thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to take risks when you're creating something because it could have not worked, and it could have been, okay, well, cool. Now I got to try again with a different way,
Yeah, absolutely. And at first it didn't. I ordered a new converter, and the new converter didn't work. So I was like, well, let's try the old converter. Yeah. And the old converter ended up working, and I was just like, it freaked me out. I got to record this weekend. We got to go. And that's, I think, one thing, if I could interject something here is, I think you have to force yourself into failure. Like, you have to commit to things. And Amick was telling me about this, and this is I interviewed him, and his interview's coming out on the channel soon. And he said he pushes himself into situations where he's forced to figure it out, and that's this camera for me, right?
Yeah,
I've never shot what I'm going to shoot this weekend, and I'm forcing myself into that learning process, so that I can just do something new, so that I can grow as a human being, as a creative, as an artist. And I feel like sometimes we're afraid to commit because in that commitment we'll be found out as a failure if we fail.
Yeah. And I think it's even scarier somebody else perceiving you as a failure as opposed to you perceiving yourself as a failure. And which is funny because one thing that I've learned about people is that they don't care about you as much as they care about themselves in the best way, where it's yeah, you could fail miserably and people will think about it for about maybe 2 days at most, if you're famous. And then,
if you're famous.
If you're famous. If you're not famous, then I can guarantee you that no one is even thinking about it at all. And that is, that's super reassuring to me. Okay, so I can try things. I can, I had you can go to my YouTube page and you'll see my short stint on YouTube where I tried a couple videos and I burned myself out like crazy. And, it's not necessarily a big failure, but I spent a lot of time on those videos and tried it out and realized it wasn't for me.
So the process, one of my favorite ones was episode 4, how I went from screaming in a metal band to composing music for media. I love that. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
But it burned you out because it wasn't your thing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was I found myself spending more time editing video because I always say that I'm not a perfectionist, but deep down, all the way down, it's there. It's for sure there. And so of course it wasn't good enough. I can't just do the video where I just that would be easy to edit and that I could just go in there and say the thing and then end it or whatever. I've got to make it artsy. I've got to put the music under it. Man, I started scoring my own videos.
It's funny. I'm watching it and I'm like, he's probably scoring this. Because it's in you. The part that matters to you is what you're going to just obsess on. So I'm sure there was elements that I would see and I'm like, he totally dropped the ball there. No offense. Yeah. And I didn't see any, but I'm sure when it came to the music, something I wouldn't even notice, you spent 2 hours on.
Oh, just completely dove into. And and even the edits, and I'd never edited a single video before I did this.
Oh, dang.
And so I had to learn DaVinci Resolve and
Yeah.
even like color grading. I shot all of those on my iPhone. So I was like,
Ooh,
yeah,
great.
yeah, thanks. It was really fun to learn all that stuff. And I'm really glad that I know how to do it now. But at the same time, like, did it accomplish necessarily what I wanted to accomplish? No. But I find new joy in what I did there. But yeah, so there's like several little things where it's like, okay, I tried that for a little while and that is not for me. Okay, cool. Now let's move on and find what is, you know.
Do you think as artists, what you're kind of explaining, I think, is like a playground? You know, it's this place you can experiment with a pretty low hanging negative results.
Yeah.
Is YouTube one of those things for you?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, my main goal was honestly to just show what I do. And then, and I was like, how can I show what I do in a creative way? And then it became, because it took up like all of my time, and I was like, man, I really want to just be making music right now. Or like, yeah, maybe that ride on the playground that wasn't totally worth it. But, yeah, I don't regret.
I think, you know, thinking about that from somebody who does YouTube, the documentation is often the best approach. So that's why I think your piano sketches, man, they're, first of all, they're beautiful. And second of all, there's something that you can just do. You can just click on the camera.
Yeah.
Just record some. So that's a
fun thing for me. I think.
Yeah. What I always say is like, you know, document what you love doing.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, it's just a natural extension of what you've already been doing. And then people can learn from it.
Do you know that reel that is going around right now where it's like, okay, I'm going to document every step. Oops. And it's like finished. You know, they start with the first step and then oops. And then it's totally done. That's completely me. Cause I'm like, okay, I'm going to turn on the camera. Oh crap. I'm in the last phase here. Okay. Well, here's what I did.
Oh, so they forget to document.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Like, that's totally me. I'm like always like, oh, okay. And I'll even go back and be like, okay, did I get that part? Nope. I forgot that. Cause I get caught up in the moment. And then I'm like,
yeah, I think that's probably the hardest part is because we're in the middle of creating. It's so hard to think about how to tell that story when it's being told in the moment.
Yeah.
Like
and
your brain's focused.
Chaotic. It's chaotic too. I mean, we just did an episode released today actually. But an episode of Beautiful Failures, my podcast.
Yes. I was listening to it with co-founder Visco.
Yes, exactly. And he talks about creative chaos. And I just love that idea. And when I think back at my like most creative times, it is chaos. The studio's a wreck. Like I am like jumping from thing to thing, and I'm like, it's all the tracks are messy and crazy, and it's not a clean and it's not a pretty process. And so I think in my mind, I'm like, I want everything to look cool, and the actual process is like really disturbingly ugly. And then when you see the final product, it's like, oh, well, yeah, that's good. Cool. But it's just, the process of creating is a messy one. And I think, I wonder too, if you spend so much time on documenting the process, which I have no problem with that. I think that's good, but documenting what you're doing in every moment, you're also thinking about what other people are seeing you do. And is that good? All the time. Maybe if you're doing something that's a very like if I'm doing something like, oh, okay, I know the steps to this. This is something that I repeat over and over again. Then it's easy. But when it's something where I'm like, oh, I'm going to try this and this and this, like, I don't know. I have a hard time with like the idea of showing people that sometimes, because it's like, it's just for me. It's my time.
I think one thing I've noticed in the documenting process of doing this, was that I found that I could record it like the process of doing it, and then after I would talk about what I was thinking.
That's better, I think.
I couldn't do both.
Yeah.
But the struggle with that is then you have all this footage you have to like hack through.
Right.
So you spend like 6 to 8, 10, 12 hours like hacking through footage to find that one clip where you're like had that thought. And so it's like it's hard because I think about people who are just coming up, right? Like somebody who is just wanting to release their first album or even their first single, right? Nobody's ever heard of them. And in social media right now where content quantity is an evolving necessity, right? To be seen. And I think they just, to have your mind in two camps must be just overwhelming because you want to have such a good piece of work, but you also have to have so much around it to point towards it.
Yeah, it used to be so much different, I felt.
Yeah.
Like. I mean, so right out of high school, I joined a band, Haste the Day, we talked about earlier. But back then, it was like the creation part of it was like, oh, you create for 2 months and within 2 years, a 2-year period. And then you tour on that album. And so like, I never felt so taxed creatively, but now I feel like, okay, so say you're an artist trying to break through and there's the whole strategy of like, okay, release a single a week or a single like every 2 weeks or whatever. And to keep that up is insane. Like, unless you have a big team behind you, like it's crazy. Like to keep that type of momentum, like when I worked at Soundstripe and we were doing those eight tracks a month, like it was low pressure. Like we were very trusted and we could change genres and whatever and like do what we needed to do to get that 8 tracks, but it was still so much. And I think about that too with like Instagram, and I see these people like it's like putting out a reel a day of like a new musical idea or a new musical thing. And it's like, that's cool. But the amount of focus that it would take me to do a reel a day, like is crazy. Like it would take me away from what I actually love doing, which is like actually pouring my heart into the music, which I'm not saying that these people don't. I mean, you can do both, but you know, I don't know, maybe it's easier when you don't have a family and kids running around behind you. And that was another thing with the YouTube thing was like, you know, you can probably hear, you know, my kids in the background.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
half my videos, my kids are screaming in the background, like just top of their lungs, just somebody tackled somebody. And I'm like, okay.
All right, well, yeah, you just kind of have to accept that as reality. It's the truth.
Yeah.
So. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I heard some earlier. I haven't heard any recently.
Yeah.
So what is the best way forward? One of my thoughts and one of my favorite bands is Us the Duo. Have you heard Us the Duo?
Yeah.
Oh, love them. If I could interview them, my heart. Okay, there's 3 people I'd love to interview. It'd be Us the Duo, Drew Holcomb, and Johnny Swim. Like, I love those guys. They just
do it.
Their music is just so. It's like very me. It's just that's kind of like my favorite type of stuff. Just
cool.
Anyway, where was I going with that? oh, Us the Duo. So they do covers, right? That's like their jam. Now, my question to you is, would that be a good strategy to do covers as your hook content, right? Because it doesn't take much effort to, forgive me, I'm not an artist in the musical sense. It doesn't take as much effort because you're not thinking of something new. You're just doing a slight spin on what's already been. So could you like mash out covers and then release something original and then like mash out covers and then release something original? Would that be a strategy?
That's a great strategy. It worked for my friend Jessie. She did a cover of just a random cover of Wicked Game on TikTok, and it blew up overnight. And all of a sudden, she puts it out on Spotify, and it's, got millions of listens, and now her other content is getting more like eyes on it, and then she ended up getting flown out to Montreal or somewhere in Quebec to do a show on live TV.
Sweet.
Yeah. So like, I mean, it's one of those things that, yeah, you can, if you're right place, right time, and you just keep doing it. I think the real answer is like, whatever you do it consistently. And
yes,
like, just keep doing it and keep putting it out. And I don't know if you've ever read The Practice by Seth Godin.
Yes, I have.
Shipping creative work.
Yes.
Incredible. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Like, sit down, do the work, and do it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And you'll get better and better. And it'll eventually, that kind of strategy pays off.
Yeah, because the first 100 times are gonna kind of suck. Yeah. It's just the nature of it. Like, yeah. Like earlier talking about, going to film a music video this weekend, like, it's going to be rough. It's not going to be that great. I'm going to see things that I hated about it.
Yeah.
But at least I did that first one.
Exactly.
And you just got to keep plugging through it, because my wife and I talk about this all the time. We have like a secret podcast that we do, and we don't want anybody to find it for like 100 episodes, right?
That's amazing.
Like, we're praying nobody finds it, because it's just not that good yet.
I'm going to try and find it now.
Oh, good luck. I will be impressed if you find it. And that's the thing is, it's just like the first 100 of whatever you do, and it's so discouraging to hear.
Yeah.
But think of it as a challenge. I did like a 90-day challenge when I first started YouTube, and I posted 6 days a week for 90 days.
Yeah.
And it was amazing, because it just like got a ton of content out, and it just got a ton of that the verbal clutter out of me.
Yeah.
And so that, like, challenge yourself to just plug through a bunch of bad stuff.
Yeah. And it's like, I listen to audiobooks all the time. I'm listening to The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Yes. I've always seen the title. It's a great title.
Yeah, it is. And there's some really great stuff in there. But he talks about, where was I going with this? Maybe I lost it. What is it?
It's all good.
Whatever. But yeah, I think it's that thing. I'll start talking about this and then it'll come back to me. But it's that thing of like, just continue to show up, and continue to put it out. And if you don't, like, no one will know what you're doing, and you won't get better. Like, because it's like, I know a ton of artists who, either musical or graphic designers or whatever, that like, they think that the first thing that they put out has to be great. And it's like, no, you're building a snowball. Like, every song that I put out, every track that I put out, every film that I score, like, it's a snowball into the next one. Like, the lessons that I learned yesterday, I apply to today. And that, that's the way we have to approach things.
Well, it's the opposite of finality, right?
Yeah.
So many times we want to kind of have something that just sets us up for life as humans, right? Like, it's that, in essence, we have a laziness to us.
Yeah.
We do. Even if we're creative, even if we're passionate, like, we want to sometimes not have to work so darn hard.
Yeah.
And so we think if we can just do it right, just get that one thing right, then it'll just be easier.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. And well, NF is one of my favorite rappers, and he says, whoever told you that life would be easy, I promise that person was lying to you. And it's so true. It's not. But that's the joy of it. If it was easy, it wouldn't be fulfilling. It wouldn't be valuable.
I remember
Yes.
what it was. He has a whole chapter, and I'm paraphrasing here. He has a whole chapter in that book where he is talking about, like, life is a struggle, and you have to figure out what it is that's worth struggling for. Right? It's this idea of like, and that's the way I view, like, okay, like the YouTube thing, right? I didn't feel like it was worth struggling for that, because that wasn't what I wanted to do necessarily. And I found that out pretty quick, and I was like, cool. However, there are a lot of things that I'm like, oh, I am down to struggle for that. Like music. I mean, I've been doing music ever since I was like 10 years old, and I've put hours and hours and hours into it. And it's hard. It's very hard sometimes. And especially to be a professional musician, professional composer, like it is freaking hard. It's not easy, but I will take that. I will take that struggle because it's worth it to me. It's not worth it to a lot of people. They might say that they want to be a professional musician, or they might say that they want to be like whatever, up on stage doing whatever. But to get there is very difficult, and you have to put in a lot of really hard hours to do that. So, find that thing that is worth the suck, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. How do you, oh man, you found it young. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you find it if you weren't maybe blessed with that moment where it fell across your path?
Yeah.
Have you had conversations with other artists that didn't know they wanted to be artists until something happened?
Yeah. I've definitely heard a lot of stories, and talked to some people who have gone through that. And I think a lot of it is like a mental shift. When you're young, you can be anything you want, right? You don't have the insecurities that you gain when you're older. When you're older and you're like trying to figure out what it is that you want to do, or you're like, oh, I think I want to be an artist. There is something you have to climb over. There is an obstacle you have to climb over, and that is your own insecurity. And like anyone can do it. Like it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort. And probably if you're older, you're going to have to schedule it in your calendar. But yeah, you just have to climb over that insecurity because it is scary. It's a really intensely scary thing to all of us, especially all of a sudden, like, okay, I'm doing this.
Like deciding.
Deciding, okay, I'm doing this. I mean, for me, like, so I've been an artist all my life, right? But owning my own business, I haven't done that all my life. And I've had to overcome a lot of lies that I tell myself about, like, oh, you're not good at math. Why are you doing this? Like marketing is gross. Like, don't do that. And it's like a lot of lies that you tell yourself because of insecurity. And I just think anyone who's trying to change the path of their life is going to have to overcome that initial insecure bump that you feel where you're like, but I'm not that. I can't be that. Like, yeah, you can. Just do it a lot.
Yeah. I've always said that whenever I experience something that I'm terrified of, and whenever I'm terrified is like there's this feeling of like, don't do it. Like,
Yeah.
don't even go there. That is the thing that I have to literally like tackle.
Yeah.
Because that is the thing that's keeping me from something else beyond that fear.
Yeah.
Like, that's not even the scariest thing. There's probably something scarier on the other side. But that initial resistance is the most important thing in that moment to tackle.
Yeah.
What's something that you've been scared of that you had to tackle in the past couple of weeks?
Oh, that's good. Well, always marketing.
What does marketing look like for
Marketing
a composer?
my services. Or, I mean, it could be a cold email,
Okay.
or like even sometimes a post, or even an email to my email list. Like, it's all a hump that I've got to get over because I'm like, oh, this is going to be annoying. Like, nobody likes getting emails in their email, like in their, but that's not true. And like either they don't notice or don't care, or it helps them. Those are the three realities. And, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to post about this and it's going to look, whatever. It's going to look gross because I'm trying to tell people about my music and whatever. But that's so silly. It's not reality. And then Yeah, I guess that would be the biggest thing that I constantly have to like reshape the story in my mind.
So positive Steven versus negative Steven.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, isn't that so true?
Yeah.
When in your career did you feel most passionate for your work? I don't believe in the passion hypothesis. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah.
Would you say that there was a point in your career you felt most passionate, and was that point where you were most fulfilled?
I think fulfillment might be a pipe dream.
Okay.
Cause every project, it's like the journey is where the good stuff is. Arriving there, usually you're like, oh, I see another hill that I want to climb over there. Like, nobody ever arrives. Passion.
Well, as soon as you arrive, you're dying.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. That's the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, passion, it's fleeting. And I don't want to like sound negative about this. I'm passionate at very different, like in little spurts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm passionate about that. But it's not enough fuel for the fire, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
It's the doing, like the slog, the like pushing through, and then finding that like tiny moment of inspiration where it's like, yeah, this is awesome. But yeah, I mean, I look back at like, I was 19, I joined a band. My first tour was across Europe, with two of my favorite bands, and amazing. That was an amazing experience. I was super passionate, and I knew nothing. I was very green at everything I was doing. But I was very passionate, and the next tour was like also huge and awesome. But on those tours, I had bad days too. Like, I felt insecurity just as much as I felt before or after. And I had days where I was grumpy and hungry and tired and like whatever, going through the stuff. And I think relying on passion is dangerous for a creative, and thinking like, I'm passionate about this, so everything's going to work out well. No, no, it's not. Not all the time. And it's going to get hard, and you're going to have to push through. And there's going to be times where you don't like it, and you got to push through it. And within there's those little pockets of just such beauty, and such like where you're like, wow, I love what I do.
Yeah.
And yeah.
What is your least favorite thing about what you do?
Oh yeah. Least favorite. Social media and editing.
Editing video or editing music?
Editing music.
Really?
Really.
So, okay, interesting. So that means like you're in the timeline of a song, changing things and clipping things like I would be in Premiere Pro.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And just like cleaning things up. It's just like at that point, like whatever, like it's just like the tedious work, where you're like, all right, I did the grandiose idea and I've got it out there, and now I'm like,
click, drag,
and
click,
it's
drag.
like,
Yeah.
that's not as fun to me. I would totally like, as soon as I'm able to hire that out, I'm going to hire that out.
Okay. Yeah. That is the first thing I hired out. Yeah. I now have a full-time editor, and she is like,
oh, well, that's great.
She's my favorite person. and all this whole journey of who I've been working with, and it's just like she makes it so much more fun. Because it's so terrible.
Oh man,
I like the process of the delivery of the idea,
mm-hmm.
and then from there it's all work.
Yeah, if I could have like my favorite job would be to like just be a person that sits there and has the ideas and goes, okay, you go do this and you go do that, And then I get to dabble with like what I really love to do, just like a little bit, and
Yeah.
then I go spend time with my family.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
And that could be a possibility
Could
one day.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's the agency model, right? That's like the if you really make it, which again, you know, once you get to that hill, you'll find another hill to climb. But it's the journey, you know.
Do you think there's many artists that are afforded that luxury? And do you think they stay the best, or do you think it makes them soft?
Well, that's a good point, you know. Yeah, I think part of being a good artist is, you know, kind of being in the struggle. And I think that every stage of your artistic career is going to be a different struggle. So like I look at like Hans Zimmer, who's I mean, he's scoring all the biggest movies. He's got a huge team, and he can kind of do that. You know, he can write the themes. He can stay up all night and write the themes, and then hand off. You know, and he's probably very hands on with a lot of stuff. But he's got a huge team that's like doing all this stuff. I am almost positive that he has as many or more gripes, like as the person just getting started. Like, because we all want to keep going. Like nobody just stops. Nobody just gets there and is just like, cool, I did it.
Yeah.
Nice. Like everybody wants to keep going. It's the whole thing that makes us human, I think.
That we never quite make it to this side of heaven, so to speak. You never quite make that satisfactory.
Yeah.
Which is I mean, that's the spiritual journey that we're on. I mean, that is it. This side of heaven, there is disappointment, there is backlash, there is pain, there is suffering.
Yeah.
And until we step into glory,
Sure.
that's it. And so I think really like it's finding those little pieces of, like you said, those spurts of moment, those moments where you're inspired, those moments where you feel passion, and then hop from those moments, and that's where you find a real creative career that you enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you can learn to enjoy, and even learn to enjoy the little snippets of time in between those moments, learn to enjoy the learning and the failing and the moving past it, and just like learn how to make the best of all that stuff, then you can have a very successful career, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys started this podcast called Beautiful Failures. Why create an entire podcast around that?
Wow. Me and Andy, my co-host, we were like talking about starting a podcast, and we were kind of having these like conversations, and naturally we kind of are able to like, vent to each other. And like, we started talking about little things like, creative jealousy, and things that like can easily just derail our creative process, or like make us feel inferior or whatever. You see one post on social media and it's like, oh, cool, that guy got that job. Awesome.
And you maybe not even you didn't even want the job, but that he got a job, it just pisses you off.
Yeah, it just makes you mad. And you're like, well, I could have done it. But it's like, yeah. And I like, it's embarrassing to say that I deal with that on a regular basis, but I do. I mean, I think we'd be lying to say that we weren't. Like most of us deal with that. And to say it out loud really takes the power out of it, I think. Where it's like, when you can admit to yourself and admit to maybe somebody else that like, oh yeah, I was creatively jealous of this person. And then you're like, that sounds silly because I also got jobs too. And I posted about them, and maybe that somebody else saw that and was like, oh, cool, you got a job.
Way to go, Steven.
Way to go. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we all deal with it. So we thought it'd be cool to, that, and there's a ton of other like little micro failures that we have as creatives that that we just wanted to dive into. And like, we of course just wanted a platform where we can have conversations with really cool people, and that's really the driving factor. They were like, how can we just talk to cool people?
Yeah, yeah.
And a podcast is a great way to do that. So if you want to talk to cool people, then start a podcast.
Exactly. That was my thought. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And so yeah, we just wanted to dive into that uncomfortable reality. We did an episode with Chris Dudley, and he talked about like this work-life balance thing that he was in. He was scoring 2 movies at once, and he was working from like 7 a.m. to like 1 a.m. and spent 1 hour of time with his family, and it was like breaking him. It was breaking him down. And but to hear someone else go through that and to be like, oh, we're all trying to figure this out. It's okay that I'm dealing with this thing. It's okay that I'm still working out the kinks, and it's okay that like I failed myself last week or whatever. I failed my email list because I forgot to send it out on a weekly basis or whatever it is. I didn't meet the mark that I set for myself, and I failed. Now what do I do?
Failure is so personal, right? Like thinking about him to be scoring 2 movies at once, it's like, man, you just arrived.
Yeah.
But he's thinking, no, my wife is like about to like throw a hammer through my door.
Yeah.
Like there's so many times, like my wife and I, we've had so many conversations about my work. She loves, and I love to spend time with her, but we have 4 children, and our oldest is 4.
Oh, you're in it. Wow.
Yeah, so we've got twins. We've got a 2.5-year-old, and we have a 4-year-old, and like it's gruel. It's war down there, and so it's like I've had to work less to show how much I love her. So failure to me is actually more videos on YouTube, because that means I'm working too much.
Right.
But then again, with my editor, so then I hired an editor.
Yeah.
And so now I have less hours, but I still can produce the same content.
Yeah.
But it's a temptation to fall into your failure and say, well, now I have an editor, so I can do more.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to know what failure is for you.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to adjust, because it's going to change too.
Yeah.
Every day it's going to change. I mean, yeah. Before, my failure was definitely like, oh, I didn't get enough beer money this week or something. Now, a big failure for me would be if I couldn't pay my mortgage, because it's like, I'm a big boy now, so I've got bills to pay and family to feed and all that stuff. But yeah, and then also like that, I mean, when you have a family, I mean, that work-life balance is it's real, at 5 o'clock, a baby is delivered into my lap. That's what happens every day. So if I don't finish my work by 5 o'clock, sorry,
buddy.
You have to wait till tomorrow at 9.
Yeah.
It's really what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like so many times, this is the hardest one that I had to get over. I listen to a lot of like, CEOs, motivational stuff, and they're, a lot of these guys are like just grinding their faces off. You listen to like The Rock or Ed Millett or Jocko Willink, right? And these guys are like, ugh! And I'm like, what is your? I just want to meet your wife.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to meet this person, because it's like, my wife is very different. Like, if I did that, my wife would be very upset, and that's okay, because that's my marriage. And I think so many times we have to be very, very, very careful, because social media is the way it is, that we have to look at our wife, or if you're a woman listening to this, look at your husband and say, okay, what works for you?
Yeah.
And that is the motivational speech you need to be listening to.
Exactly.
And you guys got to talk and work it out and say, okay, is this a season where you don't get what you want? But I hope that in the next season we can work it out better. Like there's grind seasons where I did work way more than I should have.
Yeah. I think that there's like a really good correlation between failure and goal setting, right?
Hmm.
Uh, like being able to prioritize your life in a way that you can set goals that are right for you, that aren't somebody else's goals for you, that are goals for you and your family, or, whatever it is. And, or your business, because everybody's business is totally different. Everybody's creative path is totally different. So when you set goals that are right for you, failure is going to have uh, a different sting, I think. So it's like, yeah, man, I'm gonna think about that a lot more because I think there's some truth there, and I want to set the right goals for myself that aren't somebody else's goals put on me, that are for me and my family. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
So I was talking to Amick, and he said his wife had a pretty bad postpartum depression,
Yeah.
and he literally said he sat down with her for a year
Mm.
and just didn't even work.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, like that's commitment.
Yeah.
Like that's just like that seems crazy, right? Like you have to work, don't you?
Yeah.
What's something interesting? Like I because I'm so focused on my marriage and trying to do that well, I love to talk to other men at work with their marriages. What is
Yeah.
something that's weird or abnormal about your marriage that makes your marriage work?
Well, actually, this is a funny thing. We've talked a lot about like what's normal
Okay.
for couples, and we live in the suburbs in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and
Dude, have you eaten at Sea Salt?
yeah, I did on
Oh,
Valentine's Day. It was great.
ugh, I
Yeah,
love sea salt.
it
Okay,
was
anyway,
great.
continue.
Yeah, we were like just kind of diving into what's normal, and we were like, me and my wife, we hang out a lot. Like
Me and my wife too. Yeah.
we watch TV together. We're always hanging out, and we're best friends. We just hang out, and I think that might be kind of an odd thing. I'm maybe not quite as odd as I thought, but like talking to other couples, like a lot of couples don't hang out.
Yeah. They
Like,
have like their friends and they go and they do their friends' things.
yeah, or
Yeah.
they'll like they might go their separate ways every night, and like go watch different shows or whatever it is. And now, of course, we've been trying to like, alone time is really hard to get when you have kids, and you're working from home, and we're all together all the time. So alone time, we kind of have to use our nights sometimes too to get that. But yeah, I think that's one of those things where it's like we found out maybe that's not quite as normal as we thought. Like just hanging out every night, and I love it. But
Yeah. Yeah, we don't I hate that this might sound really bad, but we don't have a lot of friends.
yeah,
Like we have a few really close friends. My wife has a girlfriend that she hangs out with a lot, and then her sister, and those are like that's her crew. And but it's not like they hang out every day. It's like normally it's me and her, and I love
yeah,
that. And so that's something that's unique and specific about your marriage,
yeah,
and that's something that you have cultivated.
yeah,
Somebody might go out and be a part of like a guy's night like every other day or like every week, and to me
yeah,
that wouldn't work for me.
yeah. I
I
don't have
probably
to.
wouldn't like it.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'd love maybe like once a month or something.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
look at those like bowling leagues and stuff, and I'm like, that's kind of cool. There's something kinda cool
I
about
like those shirts they
those
wear.
shirts are cool. You get to drink beer and play, bowl
Yeah.
every week. I would never do that, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah, sounds interesting. So is your wife a creative? Is your wife a musician? Like,
Yeah. So right now she's a stay-at-home mom, but she's also a teacher. So she teaches science. She is going back to work this year, but she played bass in a rock band for a while, and they were incredible. They were called Mosley, and it was just like a three-piece rock band. And that yeah, she could shred. It was really
that's fun.
yeah. I feel like it was funny because they'd start playing and like you'd see, and it was like a three-piece, like all girls, and like there'd be all these like kind of like metalheads in the crowd, and you could just see them. They'd start playing, and you could see like heads bobbing, like,
Okay.
and then by the end, they'd just be like full on, like, yeah, all right.
That's awesome.
And yeah, they weren't like metal or anything. It was like somewhere between like, I don't know, like Led Zeppelin and like No Doubt or something. Like,
So like a thick, kind of heavy sound, but not
yeah,
like thrasher.
she would riff. It was really cool.
That's really cool.
And she's getting into painting right now,
Nice.
which is cool.
Awesome. Did y'all meet like in a music setting?
Kind of. We met. I worked at a restaurant. I was in between. My band had broken up, and I got a job at a restaurant for a couple of years. And my friend was a mutual friend of hers, and so she came in, and I was like, "Whoa, please introduce me to this person." And we ended up actually going to the same church as well, which was like a really small community too. So it was like really cool. She was visiting from Arizona, like on kind of a long-term visit, like a 6-month, just hanging out in Nashville kind of thing. And then I got her to stay. So that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. You guys are in a
At least
great
that's
spot
what I
there,
claim.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was all you.
Yeah, it was me. It wasn't friends or anything. I was definitely.
Well, clearly, I mean, she hangs out with you the most.
That's true. Yeah,
So you talked about Soundstripe and how you were let go from Soundstripe as one of your more notable failures.
Yeah.
You would say. What is it like to work at Soundstripe? How does all that work, and why were you let go?
Yeah. Okay. So Soundstripe, I'll give a little bit of backstory. Soundstripe was started by some good friends of mine here in Nashville. And so I kind of came along there. They used to be called Level or Level O, depending on who you ask. And I came on really early and started making music for the platform. Like before I ever got paid for it. And then, my friend Micah, still friends. There's no like, of course we may have had like a short time where it was like tense. We're still good. But, Micah brought me on in 2016, I believe was when it was the end of 2016 when he asked me if I wanted to go on full time and get paid a salary and just deliver my masters and get insurance and all that stuff. Or eventually we got insurance and all that stuff. Soundstripe was definitely, I mean, it's a startup, like it's like you feel a lot of excitement and energy, and then the team starts to grow and it starts to grow and grow. And then you start realizing, oh, I don't know most of these people, like, especially after 2020, when we stopped going to the office for meetings. Cause like all of the composers all worked, at home, and, we'd go in once a week for like or maybe once every 2 weeks. I can't remember.
So there's some camaraderie, which is always
so
fun.
there was, and there was a time where I knew everyone at the company.
Yeah.
And then there was a clear time where I knew hardly anybody at the company. And I just knew like, the people that kind of started it. And, I think it started to feel really, isolating for a while. Maybe part of that was just navigating 2020 and, everything that kind of brought. But, our team was an experiment. Full-time composers cost a lot more than maybe subcontractors, and we always knew that. There were definitely some failures in communication, in communicating that to us, what was going on. And then, so it seemed very abrupt and very like, oh, okay, I don't have a job anymore. Like last week I had a performance review, and it's great. I, not to be like overly optimistic about the whole situation, but it was exactly what needed to happen in my life to push me to the next phase. because I was getting very comfortable. My job was easy. I mean, it was, putting out 8 tracks a month is hard, but I figured it out and I was doing it and I was like, it was it was simple and easy and, made
You
some
had your
money. It was
groove.
great. I had my
It's
groove.
like,
And it was easy to get complacent. And it's the time like I still hang out with Micah. And like it was like we both like we were like, yeah, I don't think that my full like potential is to make music for YouTube. Like I just don't. I just like there are artists who can just crank it out and they just do it. And I definitely feel like I'm probably more on the like it's not better, it's not worse, but I'm on the like artistic side of that where I'm like I want to spend more time. I want to do something more intentional for a specific project or for a specific idea as opposed to like broad like consumerability. I don't know if that's a word, but
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
You're
So
creating more consumables that
yes,
get kind of mashed into YouTube tracks because we need background music.
of course, yeah.
And
Which
then you kind of don't even notice who you used
yeah,
and what it was about. It was just like, okay, that sounds pretty good, and it works with my edit.
exactly. And I started feeling like I was dropping because I couldn't help but put all my heart and soul into some of these pieces, and then it's you drop it into the void, and it's gone, and it's like it might resurface randomly on something, but it's just out there. You know what I mean? Where I think that started doing a little bit of damage to me over time. Um, I was like, I just really want to be intentional with what I'm doing. But yeah, it was a hard pill to swallow for sure. There was a lot of, because they kept a few composers on, and the comparison game, man, it's real. And I'm
Ooh,
friends with all of them.
yeah.
Like, but it's hard not to think like, oh, wow, they let me go probably because I'm not as good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's like, like I didn't really have the choice to wallow in that because again, I've got a family and
You're like,
it's
all
like,
right, gotta go.
all right, gotta go. I'm making
Yeah,
moves. Here we go.
yeah.
And it's really awesome to like see like, okay, that happened a year ago and now I'm scoring my first feature film, which is
Dang. Yeah, it was that push you needed.
it was the push that I needed because I would not be here if I didn't have that push.
So let me ask you a question. As far as you talked about the snowball earlier,
Yeah.
Soundstripe was an opportunity to provide for your family, but there's not really legacy in that. And what I mean by that is like, did you think that added to your snowball, or do you think it was just something to kind of get you through a phase?
It did add to my snowball in this way.
Okay. Okay.
I got to learn and learn and learn around 450 times. And I got paid to do it. And
So you got paid to go to school.
I got paid to go to school. I learned an insane, like, amount of information during that time.
That's
Like,
cool.
about producing music, about writing in different genres, about meeting deadlines, about pushing through when the passion isn't there. About not sitting around and waiting for inspiration to strike, but being able to sit down, put in the notes, and make a song that is good. So that's completely invaluable to me. Like that time that I spent there, and it was a huge kickstart to like the company that or like the business that I started after that. Like I'm like, oh, I can take this and say, hey, I worked for 4 years at this company. I wrote 450 tracks in different genres. Like
You can count on
saying
me.
that, yeah, saying that is like I mean, that's better than 4 years in a college
Oh,
studying music
absolutely.
because you write what, like maybe 4 pieces of music in a year at I don't know. I never went to school for music, so like when you're in school for composition, like it's not nearly as much writing. And I wrote every day, all the time, and yeah, so yeah, amazing experience.
Speaking of school, if somebody you were talking to somebody who says, "Hey, should I go to school for music, or should I do X?" What would X be?
Oh yeah, X is just make music. Like
How do you make music in a way that you're growing towards a specific goal and you're actually making progress?
well, okay, so YouTube is an amazing resource.
Okay.
The University of YouTube. You can learn anything you want on YouTube, but the key is to practice it. Right? So you learn it and then you do it. And then you finish. Like don't stop finishing songs. Like
So like finish the song, record it yourself, and then release it somewhere.
yes. I mean, you don't like it's like you can put it up on a SoundCloud that you don't share or something. You can like whatever it is, it's done, move on, go
Get
to
used to that finishing process. Never
Yes.
let yourself be stagnant. Never let an idea be unfinished because it creates bad habits.
Yes. I mean, okay, if you like, let's put it in terms of working out. Like, say you want to learn how to do a pull up. Well, if you only make it this far, like a quarter of the way up, and you just keep practicing that, you're still never going to get all the way up to the top. You have to practice all the way up. You know, whatever that is, put some bands on and give yourself a little help. Like, but you have to practice each step of the way, starting, you know, getting through that middle part that's long and tedious, and then finishing saying, okay, this is done. I'm done with it. I'm not going back to it. And that's definitely a skill that every musician, every writer has to get through.
And then you're finding what you want to sound like, replicating it, practicing it, then putting your own twist on it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there, like a lot of people, it really helps them to learn other people's songs, and like take those practices. I actually have always been bad at learning other people's songs, just cause it doesn't like I lose focus on it and stuff. And I've always had to just kind of do it on my own. But, of course there is definitely like the stuff that inspires me. And, you know, you could say like, oh yeah, well that sounds like X, but yeah, definitely in whatever way possible, figure out how to write a song from start to finish and finish it and then move on.
What about the whole aspect of like the technical area of like the notes, right? So you said you're bad at math. That seems ridiculous. How could a musician be bad at math? I've heard my whole life that music is math. So,
well, I mean, kind of. I mean, I can't read music.
okay.
There's a thing. I think there's two different types of musicians.
Okay.
And this is broad categories here, but there are the kind that go from your eye, like they can go from eye to fingers.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
And I think typically that's like the math of it, right? Where it's like you go straight from eye, you can read the music and it goes straight to your fingers. I am not that way. I am ear to fingers. So like, as soon as you start throwing as soon as I start looking at something, then I'm totally distracted and I can't follow along. But if I'm listening to it, I can figure it out and play it. And I would like to be better at reading music. I mean, it would have been a lot more helpful when I was preparing all these charts for that quartet that I recorded last week. But
Because you had to tell them what to play.
Yes, which Pro Tools, the software that I use, helps do that because
So it kind of generates, you do the sound and then it generates the notes for you.
Yeah, so I program the MIDI.
Yep.
And then I can open that up in a score editor, and it as long as I like, you know, do it right, it'll show up in a playable thing for them. But there was a lot of lessons that I learned in that process where I was like, oh yeah, it would help if I didn't make the tempo so crazy fast that they had to read a bar every, you know, it was like, I was like, you know, I mean, the tempo or like the actual tempo was slow, but the bar, like it was like a high BPM. So the measure was really short.
Gotcha.
So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's like really hard to read because you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4.
They're like over there having a seizure trying to play your music.
Yeah, I was like, I pulled up some of the tracks, and the first take that we did was like, you could hear the musicians talking to each other, and they were like, "Yeah, this is really hard to read." Like,
So were you able to tweak it?
yeah, no, they were professionals. They were able to handle it, and not every cue is like that.
Okay.
Not every song was like that, but
So don't obsess about what you're not good at. Refine what you're good at. Learn the things that you need, so that way you can do what you ultimately want to do.
yeah,
Because so many times in school, we're learning all these things that never actually apply. Like I think about, like I went to school for graphic design in both my undergrad and my master's, and I took some business classes, and like you just learn all these random terms.
yeah,
And like I've never used the terms. Like I know what net 30 means now because YouTube brand deals pay me a net 30. Oh,
Right.
that means I don't get paid for 30 days, and that sucks. You
Yeah.
know, like
oh yeah, I know net 30 and net 60. Oof.
yeah. And so it's like I think so many times we feel like we have to learn before we even start getting into things.
Right.
I feel like getting into things shows us what we need to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, and there's like a really valuable way of approaching things, which is like just learn things in the moment. Like when you see it, don't be afraid of it, just learn it. Like, I mean, even like being a homeowner, my wife was like, "We need to descale our tankless water heater. Somebody told us, but we need to do that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." YouTube, and now I know how to descale a tankless water heater. Like, it's like actually pretty easy. Cool. All right. I learned
next
it.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, if you taught me that like before I was a homeowner, I would not remember at all. Like, because we're inundated with insane amount of information right now, and we don't have room.
Yeah, I think that's another thing is like, what did you call it? Your water heater? What?
Descaling.
Yeah, you need to descale your content consumption.
Yes.
Like seriously.
Yeah.
I think there's so many times I go to like look something up for my work, and I see a thumbnail and I click on it, and all of a sudden I forgot literally where I was going.
Yeah.
And so descaling like what you're consuming and then refining it towards what you actually want to learn and where you want to go and how you want to grow, that will take your creative journey to the next level.
Totally.
Like when you're not filling yourself with all the uselessness that the internet wants you to consume. So
Yeah, I mean, we are the commodity, right? Like,
yes,
we are. We are the ones. We're paying our attention to companies all the time, and everybody's fighting for our attention. Just to scroll a little bit longer, to spend a little bit more time on a post, and yeah, that can get very overwhelming. And it's like, do we, going back to subtle art of, not giving an F, is like, pick what you want to consume, prioritize what it is you want to care about, and then do that. Like, so if you don't want to care about a bunch of ads, then maybe stay off Instagram for as long, for most of the day. You set a time limit there, which is hard to do because it's addicting, because that's what makes them money. The more addicting it is, the more money they make. So,
yeah, I think that's like a whole nother conversation in the creative journey. Is like you deciding what you spend your time on.
Yeah.
And I feel like so many times the world punches and people don't punch back. And so you get punched into where the world wants you. You get punched into really building somebody else's dream rather than your own. And when you can think about what dream you want to build, then you are taking ownership of what you're consuming, where you're spending your time, everything.
yeah,
But until you find that thing that you want to pursue, you just got to taste a lot of different stuff.
yeah, for sure.
And experiment.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah, this has been great.
I
Really
appreciate
good
your time. We're at about an hour 20. I don't want to go on it longer, though. Of course I could, as always.
Yeah.
These conversations have been awesome. And I always ask a couple of questions at the end. One I forgot to ask was, who is somebody famous that you met that you act like a total fool in front of?
Oh, that's a good one.
But have you?
Yes. Oh, yeah. His name is Davey Havoc, and he's the
Okay.
singer of a band called AFI. And I've always been a big fan. And my old band kind of traveled in similar circles. So I remember there were 3 times, I'll keep this short. There were 3 times I acted a fool in front of this man.
Not just once.
No, 3 times. I was 19 and he came to one of our shows to see like the headliner because he was friends with him, and he showed up, and there are very few people that I will geek out to, but I just geeked out to this dude. And I was just like, hey, my name is Steven. I'm the singer of Haste today. And did you see our set? No? Okay, cool. Yeah, no big deal. But yeah, you're awesome. Like, I'm a big fan. So that's number one. Number two, I was hanging out in Richmond, Virginia, making a record out there, like a solo record. And I was hanging out with a dude, we went to an AFI show, and he worked at the venue, and he was like, oh, I can get us back there. And I was like, cool, let's go. And we went backstage and went into, like, we just kind of walked into their dressing room, and he was back there making a cup of coffee, and the guy I was with completely threw me under the bus. We were trying to, like, just go back there and hang.
Like, play it cool.
Yeah, we're just going back there to hang. He goes, hey, Davey, this is Stephen Keech from Haste the Day, and he really wants to get a picture with you. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. Wow. Awesome.
Boom.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay, the third time I didn't really make a fool of myself. I actually played it pretty cool, but we were playing.
You learned from the first two?
Yeah, I ignored the fact that I had met him twice, and I reintroduced myself. Hopefully he forgot too. But we played a festival in Germany together, and we were standing in line next to each other at catering. I was like, hey, how you doing? I'm Steven. Nice to meet you. Man.
Did you say anything at that point, or just you guys chatted for a minute?
No, we just chatted. Just, whatever. He could have remembered. I don't know.
I love it.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Nice.
But, yeah, that was a good question.
Cool. Before we go, where can people find you, and what do you most want people to know most about you?
Yeah. So 2 places I'd love for people to check out. One is my website, and if you are a filmmaker or podcaster, I have there's two things, free resources that you can get. One is stephenkeech.com/dark, and that is some pads and sound design that you can use in your film to kind of score your own score, like make your own score. Another is stephenkeech.com/beautiful soundscapes, and these are just 10 soundscapes that you can put behind your video, social media stuff, whatever, and they're just nice backgrounds for free. And then check out Beautiful Failures Podcast, beautifulfailurspodcast.com. Yeah, those are all my things that I'm pouring my attention into.
Well, I really appreciate your time, and look forward to maybe doing this again sometime.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. This is great.